From New York City, this is Theater Talk. I'm the show's producer, Susan Haskins.
And I'm Michael Riedel of the New York Post.
We're going to pay tribute to one of the most important theatrical forces of the last century. Harold Pinter was an actor, playwright, and director. He died at Christmas, and we're going to pay tribute to him this week.
And to discuss the work and the life of Harold Pinter, we've brought with us tonight two good friends of ours. Linda Weiner is the chief drama critic for Newsday. Welcome back, Linda. Always good to see you. And John Simon is the drama critic for Bloomberg News. Welcome, John. All right, Linda, what was it that was fresh and exciting and new about Pinter when he came on the scene with the first play, The Room, in 1957?
Well, I was a zygote, but I hadn't really liked all those comedies that I was seeing in the womb. Actually, Pinter was really important to me as a kid.
Really?
Yeah. Well, most of my friends were being turned on to theater by the Sound of Music and Peter Pan, and the one thing that made me think, hey, theater is something, was The Caretaker, which explains a great deal about me in life, right?
Yes.
No Peter Pan, yes, Caretaker. And my best girlfriend and I went to the Second City had a little
in Chicago.
In Chicago. Second City in Chicago had something called a playwright center or something where they used to do regular plays early on, but you could drink. And so we had to sit in the special teen section and eat maraschino cherries until we died, until we almost died. But I remember I saw this thing, and I thought, I don't understand it. Isn't that fantastic? And I've actually gone through my career finding that I'm most excited by plays when I'm not sure I understand them yet.
Did you eventually get around to understanding The Caretaker?
Oh, no. Yes, but I never ate a maraschino cherry again in my life.
Right. John, was it a fresh new voice? What was going on in the British theater before Harold Pinter came along and kind of exploded it?
Well, there were other things. Terence Rattigan, for example, and Sam Somerset Maugham, for example, and others. No, the thing about Pinter is, let me make it clear, I don't think he was a no talent, but I don't think he was a genius. He was somewhere in between, and too much is being made of him. And I think the plays for which he is most famous, The Birthday Party, The Homecoming, and The Caretaker, are his worst. and the most pretentious, the most ultimately meaningless, the most manipulative, the most contrived.
And The Breakthrough.
A breakthrough, yes. I mean, if the barbarians break through the Roman Empire, that's a breakthrough too. But the point is that he could write perfectly decent plays, for television, where he wanted to be more of the common man, more of the general public.
For radio too.
Radio too. And also for the theater, sometimes when he was like Betrayal, like Old Times, like No Man's Land, like even quite late Celebration, when he was trying to be just a playwright, not a great playwright, and then he was okay.
Yes, but to get to the phase where he could get those jobs writing television plays and infamous, well-known screenplays, he had to first be declared the great genius of the British theater by those early plays, such as The Birthday Party, which I believe ran a week in its first production, but then was discovered by a very important British critic,
Harold
Hobson, who suddenly saw what he thought was Pinter's genius, a word we should define perhaps, and said, this guy's really important, don't miss him. What was it, Linda, that Hobson saw that whether it was deserved or not, elevated Pinter to such notoriety?
Well, I believe in those early plays that John has dismissed, that the importance of subtext, the importance of all about humanity that doesn't get said in a conventional dialogue play. He basically was writing thrillers without the plot. He was, his famous silences, there was so much going on in those silences. There was so much that was left unsaid. And something that Pinter, my favorite Pinter quote actually, which explained things about why I was imprinted to him like a baby duck after Caretaker was that life is so much more mysterious than the theater allows it to be. And I think that this acknowledgement of the total baffling mystery of human creatures and relationships and how maybe things happen the way you remember them, but maybe they haven't. And that may sound as if somehow he's relinquishing the responsibility of shaping the theatrical evening, but in fact what he's doing is he's digging so much deeper into the way we really communicate when what we're saying when we're saying something else.
He also said, "I'm writing about the weasel under the cocktail cabinet,"
Right.
a quote he later regretted. But is this using this play of these plays with a sense of menace? Is this a gimmick, John?
Yeah, it is. It's, you see, there are two kinds of mystery. There's the kind of mystery where you know all the facts, and there's something bigger and greater and deeper, and that all the facts still can't explain. That's fine. But then there's the kind of mystery where you deliberately omit important things. You don't explain the motivations of characters. You don't explain who these characters are. And the mystery lies in all the facts that are not told, that are deliberately withheld. And that kind of mystery is a gimmick.
There was a very fine production, I thought, which I know you didn't like it, but I know you loved it, of The Homecoming, just last year with Eve Best. And it wasn't a play, actually. I was sort of on your side before I'd seen this revival thing. You know, there's a lot of nothingness here, and there's much more is being made of it. But I have to take issue with what you said about the, we don't really know the motivations or who these characters are. I actually found watching that play, The Homecoming, that as spare as it is, you had a real sense of this admittedly strange family, but you had a real sense of their dynamic and who those characters were. And I thought that's a real feat in using such spare language to convey a whole family drama and dynamic to you.
Yeah, it was David Hare who said that Pinter took Beckett and brought him into the everyday world. And so much of what I adore about Beckett, I mean, I sort of go Chekhov, Beckett, Pinter, and these are the guys that make me laugh. So, take that, Boeing.
Right.
Well, in sense with Pinter's plays, he doesn't map them out. He really creates them like a painting. He sits and he has said this, he let the characters talk to him and express themselves, and the play dictate its own form. So he doesn't decide before he writes a play what he's going to do. He just sits. He's of the school to just sit and write.
Well, maybe that's your objection to it. It's just scribbling.
Exactly. You said like a painting. Well, there's a big difference between Rembrandt and Jackson Pollock.
Yes.
And his kind of painting is dribbles, like Jackson Pollock, which...
Well, he was of his era. It was the dribble period.
Well,
seriously.
yes, but it doesn't, for me, it doesn't work in words and theater. And why the wife stays, I mean, until then she seems to be...
In what play?
In The
In The
Homecoming.
Homecoming.
Yeah.
She seems to be a somewhat odd woman, a somewhat imperious woman, if you like, but she still is a wife and a mother, and they live in America, and they seem to be okay. And then she lets the husband go away, who takes it on the chin as if it were the most natural thing in the world, and she stays to be the whore to all the rest of the family.
But I truly saw that as Harold Pinter's wet dream, and that this was a man's fantasy, and then so you either accepted that farcical premise or not.
I don't think she stayed to be a whore. I think she stayed to control these men. And it's very possible that these people never were from America, and it's very possible that she was a whore.
Why would she want to control men like that? They're men to be avoided rather than controlled.
Well, that's the point. It's a complete fantasy and a male fantasy at that, but we don't have Harold Pinter here to explain it, and he really didn't.
I think you put your finger on something that occurs throughout these plays, which is a shifting of power among the characters. And these plays often begin with someone, as in the case of The Homecoming, the father, the patriarch, who looks to be in control, but as the play moves on, we see that that control is an illusion and that someone else emerges to take control. That's a good way, that's a good dramatic structure,
Yes,
is it not,
well,
John?
if it's power, as you say, but I don't call it power, I call it one-upmanship. It's a bunch of smartasses trying to one-up on everybody else. And that's good for one play.
Oh,
But
John, we've had some fun doing that in our time, haven't we?
well, but we are not a play by Pinter.
But that is not a structure, that's a dynamic. And what Pinter was celebrated for was the dynamic of menace that ran throughout his plays. And he himself would say that he was not predetermining the structure. He was allowing the structure to create itself as he sat there and wrote.
But a lot of playwrights, right? I mean, some know what they're going to do before they write, and some let the characters speak. And so I'm not sure that really defined him particularly. Stoppard said, there was this, I'm going to quote other people about him, because there were at his, he died at 78, but for his 70th birthday, the London theater world went sort of berserk in a sort of adorable way, and everybody was writing tributes to him and everything, and it all seemed so inappropriate because the guy was so tough and, you know, unsentimental. So I love that, and Stoppard said that as a young playwright, he would look at most of the plays that were being produced and say, I could do that. Oh yeah, I understand how that's done, and I could do that. And he said, he looked at Pinter's plays and he said, I can't do that, and I don't know how he does it.
Oh, that's a wonderful point, yeah.
I think you can't always say, take as Bible or gospel what a playwright says about his own work, because I think Pinter's best plays have a very fine structure. Betrayal, a play that you like, is very well plotted out.
Yeah.
And Pinter started out in the theater as an actor, doing a lot of these maybe over-plotted kind of bad drawing room comedies, whose structure he then took and then filtered it through his own Pinter sensibility.
When he was trying to be a good playwright, he was perfectly okay. It's when he was trying to be a great playwright that he was not okay.
Betrayal is fun, but it's a gadget. It's a gadget play. It works backwards. It takes the end of a relationship and goes back in time until it starts. And that, you know,
yeah, I find it the most human and moving of all his plays.
That's a Pinter
I do
Acorn
too.
play. No, I think it's a wonderful play.
It's a wonderful play.
But I think that it's also his most accessible play, and in that way, his least Pinteresque play, and maybe that's why
John likes it.
Well, the Pinteresque plays are the young man's plays, these forces of energy that you're talking about, Homecoming, Birthday Party, Caretaker, the aggressive
and working
plays.
class.
Yeah, working class.
And working class, yes.
There is a short passage in a book about Joseph Losey by the English historian David Corty, not to be confused with the American reviewer.
Joseph Losey made the movie The Servant that
Yes,
Pinter
The
wrote.
Servant, but also Accident.
Ah, yes. I've seen
And
that
this
movie.
was at the time of Accident. This was a press conference chaired by Andrew Saris.
Pinter and Losey are in New York promoting this movie.
This is a press conference mostly for college students and college young people, and it's chaired by Andrew Saris, and Ross Whetstone writes about it in the Village Voice. I'd like to hear your explanation of the accident at the end of the movie. One of the student editors asked Pinter. I'd like to hear yours, Pinter replied. When someone asked if perhaps the relevance of the movie could be fully understood only by an English audience, Pinter reportedly blew his nose, pocketed his handkerchief, and said, "What do you mean by relevance?" The questioner offered message instead. Message? The same fate befell significance. Andrew Saris commented that everyone had been asking what the homecoming meant. I'd understand questions about meaning, Pinter replied, if I knew what the word meaning meant.
He's just being a jerk.
He was playing with that.
Oh, I know, but
Go on.
Go on, John.
But there's wholesome play and
agree with
unwholesome
you.
play. And later, I have no explanation for anything I do at all. By nature explicatory, Losey nevertheless joined in the Trappist ritual. Was there any social comment implicit in the large quantities of alcohol consumed in the movie? I don't know what you mean by social comment. To this, Pinter added, people just had bottles around and drunk out of them. Asked if he edited his own films, Losey replied, it depends what you mean by edit. Well, did he make the final cuts himself? It still depends on what you mean. The critic John Simon accused the pair of insulting their audience and asked Pinter if he was aiming to do away with words altogether. This got a reply: "I love words. I just try to use them selectively." Simon then pointed to some factual errors about Oxford in the film and spoke of the sublime disregard for reality that pervades the entire film. After the meeting, he announced, "I've seldom seen two such consummate phonies on one stage at one time."
Bravo, John Simon.
Thank you, John.
About Pinter as a director, he was supposedly quite a good director and a very good actor too. How do you think his experience as an actor, his career as an actor, influenced the writing of some of the plays? Can you see an actor at work in these plays?
Watching Pinter play Pinter was really a revelation.
What did you see him
And he played the torturer in One for the Road at the Pinter Festival that Lincoln Center did in 2001, which was the summer of 2001 and shortly before he was diagnosed with throat cancer. And he was everything I wanted Pinter to be up there, you know, that sort of big bow wow face and that extreme masculinity. There's a kind of a gruffness, a brutality that...
A coiled, though, brutality.
A brutality, but you see, in the early plays, it was brutality and ambiguity. And in the late plays, which were meant to be straight political plays, there was brutality and crudeness. He didn't want ambiguity in it. He wanted people to see what it was that human beings were doing to one another, and he didn't want to play around with it. He wanted you to know.
And he acted that very well.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Now, we had Raul Esparza and Ian McShane on the show when they were in The Homecoming, and they made an interesting point about Pinter, the actor, then becoming the writer, that Raul, I remember, said, there's a line where he's smoking a cigar, and he said, you know, an actor's got to technically work out, the cigar's got to sort of finish down by the end of the scene so you can put it out and go on. And Pinter said, don't worry about it, because he had written the scene to match exactly the time it takes to smoke a cigar on stage. And I thought it was a very interesting technical way of going about a playwright that only an actor would know, just how long it takes you to smoke the cigar.
Also exactly the time to smoke out a phony.
Now. All right, now, John, I want you to say something nice about Pinter.
Well,
I know you like Betrayal, but I know that you're very fond of a terrific play, No Man's Land.
When you get two very great actors like Gielgud and Richardson,
who did it originally, famously.
Yeah, I mean, then you don't need a great play. You have a great event. And he's been lucky in that The Homecoming here, which was praised, was partly good because he had very good actors.
Yeah.
And some playwrights don't have that luck. Now, obviously, you have to have a big name in order to earn that luck.
Is it luck, or do actors love to play this because it gives them more?
I think they like to play it. I mean, every actor I know done Pinter
Yeah,
would say
but
it's
you know,
a lot of fun.
There's a Labyrinth company in New York whose plays are always actors' exercises, posturing as plays. And to some extent, that's what Pinter wrote. Because he was an actor and he knew what actors wanted, he gave them what they wanted, but not necessarily what audiences want, not necessarily what critics want, not necessarily what posterity wants.
But you're a rare voice, John, of a critic who's objected to Pinter. Most critics have praised him.
I would rather be a rare voice than to howl with the masses.
Right. Audiences have come to believe that because they don't understand it, as you were back when you were eating maraschino cherries, that makes it good.
Yes.
Because we don't get it, that's great art.
Yeah, and if we pretend to get it, that makes us great.
Intelligent, yes.
Yeah.
Now, Linda, you're shaking your head.
We don't have to pretend to get it. It's all there. It's just that art, as opposed to entertainment, doesn't blow its wad the first time around. The more you see it, the more you see in it. And his plays have held up for me. You know, they have made going to the theater for me better. You know, it's been a good part of my life was that Pinter was alive when I was alive.
Yes, but I would rather not have a play that becomes good on the third occasion.
Better.
I'd like to see them good on the first or second occasion.
Now, what about Pinter, the public intellectual? I mean, he gave an incendiary speech when he accepted the Nobel Prize in 2005, essentially, you know, denouncing America as this horrible, terrible, imperialist power.
A bloodthirsty wild animal.
I know, you know, all the yahoos on the left thought that was wonderful and great, but I mean, isn't that overstating the case a little bit, Linda?
It was as a Yahoo on the
Yes,
left.
yes.
At today's performance, the Yahoo on the left will be played by.
That's right.
Actually, he was not just against America during the Iraq War. He was a human rights advocate throughout most of his life. He was the Jewish son of a tailor, had to leave London during the bombing, lived in the moors by him as a kid, came back to London. Everything was crashed around him.
So he suffered from a brutalizing regime early on.
Well, I believe that you can see that things didn't make sense, that there was a sensibility, a modern sensibility about things not making sense. And I think that a lot of times that the plays, they require a kind of intuitiveness that in fact is the way we learn about the world. You know, that not all the dots are connected. Some of the dots you have to connect yourselves, and some of them will never be connected, and sometimes you'll connect them later on.
But didn't he say, Michael, in terms of the politics, and like, for instance, Tony Blair, that as an artist, I don't connect the dots, but as a citizen, I must connect the dots and condemn Blair and condemn Bush?
Yes, but I think of that speech, if I don't remember that speech, I thought he overstepped the bound because it was not just an anti-Bush speech. It was an anti-American speech. And there are critics who said that Harold Pinter was anti-American.
All his life.
Why? How do you know this?
Well, because I've read some of his statements in newspapers, in magazines, elsewhere. He was a consummate America hater, but then he would come to America as often as possible and collect big fat paychecks. And there's something loathsome about that.
He was a conscientious objector during the Cold War when he in London, which had nothing to do with America, just that he said that he thought it was a load of crap. And
he thought America was a load of crap?
No, he thought that the Cold War was a load of crap and that he was going to be a conscientious objector at the time. He had big problems with Chile and Pinochet, and this was not something that he just got up one day and said, "Those grubby Americans, I think I'll just exploit them for all they're worth, and they're too stupid to understand me."
Yes, John said he hated us for a long time. But I mean, there is a fair point there, though. I mean, I do love the intellectuals who can trash the country and then offer a big Broadway revival, and here they are.
But so many of his plays are about torture.
Yeah.
You see, and we were torturing starting, it wasn't just news now, it was news from the beginning of the war, what was going on there, and just because we didn't find out till later on doesn't mean he was wrong.
Mm-hmm. I don't mind many plays about torture, but I mind even more plays that are torture.
I saw that one coming.
On a positive note, Linda, of the entire canon, the body of Harold Pinter work, in your mind, the play to think about, study the most, that continually opens itself up to you to reveal new things is?
No Man's Land.
No Man's Land?
No Man's Land now.
Yeah.
And the line that stays with me, because there's these two men, and one may have had an affair with the other man's wife, and they might have happened, or it might not have happened, or maybe they didn't care. And one of the characters said, "I didn't take anything from you. I only took the part that every woman holds in reserve for a rainy day."
That's a good line, John.
It's a good line, but a good line doesn't make a great play.
All right. John Simon from BloombergNews.com, Linda Weiner from Newsday. Thanks for sparring a little bit over Harold Pinter.
I'm rather worried about the carpet. It's not me, it's my father. He's obsessed with order and clarity. He doesn't like a mess. So, as I don't believe you're smoking at the moment, I'm sure you won't object if I move the ashtray. And now perhaps I'll relieve you of your glass.
I haven't quite finished.
You've consumed quite enough, in my opinion.
No, I haven't.
Quite sufficient, in my own opinion.
Not in mine. Leonard.
Don't call me that, please.
Why not?
That's the name my mother gave me. Just give me the glass.
No.
I'll take it then.
If you take the glass, I'll take you.
How about me taking the glass without you taking me?
Why didn't I just take you?